Hello and welcome to another episode of the Military History Club's Great Battle in 10 Minutes feature. Today I'm discussing the Battle of the Mareth Line in southern Tunisia that was fought by General Giovanni Montgomery's 8th Army and the 1st Italian Army under General Messe from the 20th to the 31st of March 1943. Since his victory at El Alamein in Egypt in November 1942, Monty had pursued Rommel's Panzer Army more than 1,300 miles across the desert, capturing Tripoli in Libya on the 23rd of January 1943. Their final battle at Medellin in Tunisia on the 6th of March was a comprehensive defeat for Rommel, who, worn out and convinced the battle for Africa was lost, had returned to Germany to recuperate, leaving Messe in command. The Italian general's 6th Understrength divisions from left to right, Young Fascist, Trieste, German 90th Light, Spezia, Pistola, and German 164th Light, were now occupying the Mareth Line, a defensive system created by the French in the 1930s that stretched from the sea to the Montmartre Hills. In immediate reserve was the 15th Panzer Division, with the 21st Panzer Division stationed further back to cover the Tabaga Gap. Monty's plan of attack was for 3 infantry divisions, the 4th Indian, 50th Tyneside, and 51st Highland, to attack the extreme enemy left flank near the sea. The initial assault would be by a single brigade, the 151st of 50th Division, but the whole will be widened, said Monty, and exploited. The tactics will be to roll up the enemy from the sea, working southwestwards. His intention was to continue this thrust and nourish it almost indefinitely. At the same time, he would send the New Zealand Corps of 27,000 men and 200 tanks around the right or land flank of the Mareth Line, west of the Montmartre Mountains, by a route scouted by Major Vladimir Peniakov, or Popsky as he was known, and a patrol of the long-range desert group. His last 2 divisions, the 1st and 7th Armoured, would hold the centre ground, while the 2 flank thrusts were developed. "I do not know what the enemy will do about it," he wrote to an officer. "He is not strong enough to hold off both thrusts simultaneously. If he concentrates against one, then the other will progress." The attack began at 9:30 p.m. on the 20th of March 1943. All at once, wrote 21-year-old Lieutenant Lionel Dowie Baker, the inferno of the 8th Army's massed artillery burst over the desert. A great segment of the darkness erupted in a furious storm of explosions and darting flashes, which leapt in myriads against the night sky. The battle was on. The assault by the 50th Division's 151st Brigade fell on the Young Fascists closest to the coast. Their defences were protected by a very deep and steep-sided wadi, Zigzag, whose bottom was everywhere muddy and in places filled with standing water. In his dispatch of the battle, General Sir Harold Alexander, the Army Group Commander, wrote, "Our troops advanced to the assault, carrying fascines and scaling ladders, as though at the storm of Badajoz. The enemy's fire, both frontal and enfilade, was very heavy, and it was only by the greatest dash and courage that our advanced troops succeeded in crossing the wadi and establishing themselves on the far bank. 3 of the powerful enemy strongholds were captured, and the infantry were firmly established. Unfortunately, it was proving impossible to reinforce them, for the wadi, which they had crossed on foot, was quite impossible for wheels and almost impassable for tanks." After dark on the 21st, the 2 assaulting battalions of the 151st Brigade were reinforced on their right coastal flank by the 5th East Yorkshires of 69th Brigade. More strongholds were captured that night, but a heavy downpour of rain on the 22nd added to the difficulties, not least because it prevented close air support, and when Messe put in a heavy counterattack later that day with the 15th Panzer Division and part of the 90th Light, knocking out more than 30 Valentine tanks, which had crossed the wadi to support the 151st Brigade, the position became increasingly untenable. During the night of the 22nd and 23rd of March, convinced his men were about to be overrun, Major General John Nichols, commanding the 50th Division, asked his corps commander, Lieutenant General Lees, for permission to abandon the bridgehead and withdraw his men back across the Wadi Zigzag. After checking with Monty, Lees issued the necessary orders, and the withdrawal took place that night under cover of artillery fire. By his own admission, Monty had hoped to widen the 151st Brigade's initial incursion into the Mareth Line and roll up the enemy from the sea. That was no longer possible, and according to Alex, the original plan for pugilists had therefore to be abandoned. Yet Monty deserves credit for rapidly devising an alternative. "I shall now nourish my left hook," he told Alex on the 23rd, "and I am sending HQ 10 Corps with 1st Armoured Division complete to join the New Zealand party and push in towards Gabesh from the southwest. The left thrust or hook will now be very strong and will have over 300 tanks." Already by the evening of the 22nd, Freiberg's New Zealand Corps had used the reconnaissance report sent back by Popsky and the LRDG to get around the Matmata Hills and was engaged with the 21st Panzer Division at the Tobaga Gap, having broken through one line of minefields the night before. To bolster his defences, Messe had sent the German 164th Light Division and some Italians to reinforce the 21st Panzer, but they would be heavily outnumbered and outgunned when Monty's own reinforcements reached Freiberg on the 25th. The latter now included the 4th Indian Division, which had been ordered to support the left hook by thrusting into the mountains to the west of the Mareth Line and opening the road from Medani to Bir Sultan as a shorter route of supply for 10 Corps. Once that had been done, it was to advance along the spine of the Matmata Mountains and descend from there to the Mareth-Gabesh Road, thus executing, in effect, a smaller left hook. The plan, noted Alex, with its reminiscences of El Alamein, was christened Supercharge. By the 26th, the 4th Indian Division had cleared the road through the Qasar El Halouf Pass and turned north to work towards Chegumi. But the advance of 10 Corps had taken longer than expected, and Monty had to postpone the attack on the Tobaga Gap until the 26th. By then, the defences in this 6,000-yard bottleneck had been strengthened by mines and the arrival of the 15th Panzer Division, giving a total of 2 German Panzer Divisions and 1 infantry division. Aware that getting through the gap would not be easy, Monty arranged with Air Marshal Harry Broadhurst, commanding the Desert Air Force, for a huge air attack to precede the ground offensive in the afternoon of the 26th of March. It was an inspired move. For 2.5 hours prior to the ground attack, Broadhurst's planes, including 22 squadrons of Spitfires, Curtiss P-40, Warhawk fighter bombers, known to the British as Kitty bombers, and Hurricane tank busters, armed with 2 40mm anti-tank cannons, pounded the German positions with bombs and machine gun fire, creating great destruction among his guns and transport and having a most serious effect on morale. Spearheaded by the 8th Armoured Brigade's 150 tanks, most of them Shermans, and 3 battalions of Kiwi infantry, the ground attack was made with great ferocity at 4 p.m. as a dust storm was blowing. The German positions were quickly penetrated, though the fighting continued on the high ground for much of the night. During the bitter struggle for Point 209, 2nd Lieutenant Nagarumi of the 28th Maori New Zealand Battalion personally destroyed 2 machine gun posts and inspired his men to beat off several German counterattacks. Twice wounded, he refused to be evacuated and was killed in the final action the following morning. He was awarded a posthumous Victoria Cross, the first Maori recipient of the medal. Meanwhile, the vanguard of the British 1st Armoured Division, navigating by moonlight, had driven past the bulk of the enemy's armour and by dawn was close to El Hamma and just 15 miles from Gabesh. There it was stopped by a strong German anti-tank screen and adverse weather conditions. Fighting ferociously, the remnants of 3 German divisions, the 15th and 21st Panzer and 164th Light, bought the rest of the 1st Italian Army enough time to withdraw back down the narrow coastal corridor from the Mareth Line to the new defensive position at Wadi Akarit, north of Gabesh. On the 29th, the New Zealanders entered Gabesh, but the bulk of their quarry had slipped away. As at Alamein, Monty would face accusations of winning a battle, but failing to destroy an enemy army that, but for a brief moment, was at his mercy. In his reflections on the battle, Monty described Mareth as the toughest fight since Alamein. The enemy position was very, very strong, he wrote, and to have turned them out in the space of a week was a truly amazing performance. Yet it was also the most enjoyable battle he had fought, as it gave considerable scope for subtlety and for outwitting an opponent. It ended with the capture of 7,000 prisoners, many of them German, and gave the enemy a mauling it could never have contemplated. He explained away the defeat on the coast which in effect forced him to abandon his initial plan to roll up the Mareth Line from the sea, by noting that it served its purpose by drawing in enemy reserves. He had then resorted to Plan B by dropping the frontal assault and reinforcing the left hook with the 1st Armoured Division. In Monty's telling, the reinforcing of the right hook was all part of his flexible plan. In reality, he did not fight that way. He liked to prepare a battle to the minutest detail. That way, he thought, he could control the outcome. But Mareth, like most battles, did not go to plan. If Monty deserves credit, it is for recognising that, as Field Marshal Lord Carver, who fought in the battle, put it, his initial plan had failed miserably, and for rapidly devising an alternative which succeeded. Thank you.